You think Alex would have learned his lesson after all those other missions he's been with, but he's still an ass toward everyone. Hi everyone, and welcome to another Rant episode. Again, I'm Archer9234. Today I'll be discussing episode 36 from Power Rangers Time Force titled Circuit Unsure. Now, before I begin talking about the episode, I want to bring up certain things that had come up in this episode. This episode is famous because this was the episode where the majority of PR fans had found out that Tree Trang was unfortunately killed back in 2001. Now, back in the East Coast, thanks to 9/11, unfortunately, Power Rangers Time Force had suffered a lot of broadcast issues, especially the following week of 9/11. We were unable to actually watch several weeks of PR Time Force because they were unable to get TV signals for several weeks. But this episode also, even though everything was repaired at that point, this episode was unfortunately had been skipped in New York City when it originally had broadcast. So I actually technically never saw this episode when it first ran. So I never knew Tree Trang was actually killed until like around 2003, around the beginning of Ninja Storm, because this episode was originally never aired, and I never actually saw it until several years later. Now this episode 36, Circuit Unsure, was based off episode 46 of Time Ranger. It's relatively pretty much a similar adaptation from the episode. They pretty much follow the same thing, although the only difference is pretty much is that the monster, instead of doing a self-destruct sequence, he was just having the place to be blown up by a bomb and for ransom. That was pretty much the only difference. Other than that, the episode is pretty much identical to Time Ranger's episode. So the episode begins where the group, Katie, Lucas, Trip, are listening to Circuit's little stories and stuff from different past time periods. Then Jen and Wes walk in later and start discussing everything. And then Lucas brings up a major plot issue with Circuit. The reason why it's a major plot issue is because since the characters come from the year 3000 and Circuit is linked up to the future time archives and has all the stuff stored and all the things that have happened in the past or are going to happen in the past, he's a major issue, a plot issue for Time Ranger and Time Force. Since he knows the outcome for every monster battle and every way they defeat monsters, technically Circuit could have rewritten everything so that they could have captured Rancic really fast. And they bring it up in this episode specifically. This is the reason why I never liked time travel, because there's two possible ways time travel could be explained. Whatever course you change in the past, where you are in the present, will affect the future, and it will automatically be changed. But then there's another aspect of time travel where no matter what you do will not change your future. For example, if you killed your grandfather, the you that you killed him would still exist because you exist in this specific time period. It's a very complicated mess. But so what happened was that Lucas and everyone asked him to, try to find out what was going on 1 month in the future. And unfortunately, he looked up what was going to happen. But then Alex in the future purposefully deleted the information. So after the cause of this, they thought Circuit had a glitch and he wasn't really trustworthy with information, and so everyone was rejecting his help and assistance in other areas, so he was getting very upset, and so he went and left the clock tower. Now this episode brings up a thing I really did not like why Bandai didn't do. I really wish Bandai had released a Circuit or Taku motorized toy for collectors. Circuit shows his personality in this episode, and every time you look at him, you're like, gee, I really wish I had a Circuit or a Taku for Time Ranger fans on my desk, and I had all the lights and stuff, and it blinks. And I don't mean not talk, but it would have been nice that it would have been there. I wish really Bandai had released this toy. So while everyone is trying to work and fix, look up their stuff, like for example, Katie and Jen are looking up information about criminals or something, and Trip is repairing a gadget. Everyone's getting kind of like where did Circuit go? Where did Circuit go? So they have to go and hunt where Circuit went, because they figure out that they hurt his feelings, because they basically said, you're not really needed now. I also like to point out and say that Katie and Jen, while they were working on their futuristic computer terminal, the graphics department forgot to insert the video image when the camera was panning up from the bottom all the way up to Trip, or I think it was either Trip or Wes. They forgot to put in the video screen in that one shot. So after a little while that the Rangers were hunting around for Circuit, Trip thought that, well, Circuit might go back to where they originally crash land back into the year 2001. He was correct, and they were discussing the situation while a monster came into a factory nearby and were capturing people and taking them over. Luckily enough that Trip and Circuit had entered the building before the self-destruct sequence was activated. Now when the Rangers call Trip and Circuit, they find out that this person has a self-destruct sequence activated, they can't go in, so don't try to open doors and stuff. But then I was thinking of, how come Katie didn't open the door? They were complaining about that no one can open the door, everything's locked. Did they forget that Katie had super strength and she can pretty much rip off the door? It was convenient they forgot that aspect of her character because they would have been blown up from the self-destruct sequence. The one thing I didn't like though is while they were searching for Circuit, they didn't actually call Circuit on their morphers. In several episodes and occasions, they've called Circuit directly from the morpher. They should have gave at least an explanation of why they didn't do it, because it just felt like they didn't think of it. They were looking around the city, and I'm like, can't they also track him because he's kind of high-tech technology? You'd think they would have been able to track his like futuristic metallic alloys or something. I know it's kind of an over-analyzing of the episode, but it was like at least you should have gave an explanation of why they couldn't call him from his morpher. I mean, he could have said they turned off his communications. So while the monster's inside the power plant of some sort, and he was setting up the self-destruct sequence, the monster, surprisingly they had allowed this footage, because they were using the footage from Time Ranger, they were showing the monster with a more traditional gun. I mean, traditional as in, it has a barrel, it has a regular standard trigger, it looks like an ordinary pistol from standard current time, instead of being a laser of some sort. Usually in standards and practices, they don't allow this because it's showing, even though it shoots laser, it's showing a normal gun usage, and you're really not supposed to show that to kids because they can imitate it and do other stupid things. I'm surprised they got away with it, but for some reason Time Force got away with a lot of things that were usually not allowed in past and future PR seasons. They were just lucky, I guess. They got around the S.p.d. Now, though, another thing I want to also point out that normally when Trip is outside the clock tower and with regular civilian people, he's an alien, so he puts the bandage over his jewel thing for his head. In this particular episode, he didn't have his jewel bandage on his jewel. He was reading people's minds from the outside of the building, and he didn't have it on. And I was like, why did you forget to put it on? You cover it up for a specific reason because you're an alien. I thought that was a really big mistake inside Time Force. So after a while, the Silver Guardians found out that the place was going to be blown up, so they were deployed, and Eric had also arrived in the scene. After this, the Time Force Rangers were fed up waiting, and they were going to infiltrate the place. So they go and morph. I also like to point out that Jen actually missed her morphing mark. Everyone went time for, but then she was half second too late while everyone else was in sync. Now later on, when the Rangers and the Quantum Ranger and the Silver Guardians infiltrate the power plant, they get into the place without it blowing up. I'm like, didn't Trip specifically say that the place might blow up? And I'm like, Eric and the Silver Guardians went in without double checking anything, and they were just in there. I thought that was a real big issue with this episode. The reason why this happened is because in the Time Ranger episode, this was not an issue in Time Ranger. They simply just went into the building because it was a separate circumstance because the monster was going to blow it up with his own specific bomb, and it was linked to the doors. I want to also bring up an issue with the Time Force suits. Now, the Time Force suits were very unique, and they haven't been actually copied since then. Is that the visors you see on all their helmets, they're specifically colored to the Rangers thing. The reason why this has been only done in Time Force and no other series, technically, yeah, you can say the visor for Gosei Knight and for Gokai Silver, they're colored, but they're done in a different way, and I'll explain a little bit later. Now, the visors for the Time Force Rangers and the Time Ranger actors, they're specifically made in their color. Now, the reason why this is a big issue for the actors is because they're actually physically blind. The hero helmets, you actually cannot see through it because the visor, there is no visor. The the arrow symbols on their face are totally opaque. You cannot see in the front. That's the reason why there's a continuity issue when you see the Time Force Rangers, the Time Rangers in the Japanese footage fighting. You notice that the visors have like a bent curve. That's the reason why they have to switch between a hero helmet, which is the close-up shots for when the camera's looking at them, to a fighting helmet. Because the fighting helmet is used in order for the actors to actually see and to actually act. Because normally when they're in their hero helmet, there's no visible way you can actually see through it with your eyes. That's the reason why if you watch in Gokaiger episode 15, Time Fire's head is actually slightly looking down when the camera's going through. You actually see him looking slightly down. That's because he can't actually see his mark. He can't actually know what he's actually looking at. So while the Rangers are trying to get to the place to deal with the self-destruct sequence, Katie and Wes are holding up the door. This is actually the only time where Katie's super strength came in, even though it wouldn't really make any sense because automatically Rangers will automatically get extra boosts in strengths because they're in the suits. But at least this is the only time that Katie's super strength is actually relevant in the Japanese footage, because technically the reason why they gave Katie the super strength thing was because it was to try to explain why in the Japanese footage she was bigger and taller in that footage because again Time Yellow was a guy. Unfortunately, it would have been more practical to make Time Green the girl because he was more of a shorter person and more of a weaker stature. It would have made Katie more of a prevalent to be the Green Ranger rather than the Yellow. But instead of breaking with tradition, they went with Yellow, and that's the reason why they gave her the super strength, which really didn't play a lot of importance throughout the season, although it would have been very helpful in other aspects. So while Trip is trying to break the code in order to turn off the self-destruct sequence, Alex finally contacts Circuit and tells him, yeah, I'm the one who erased your memory, and you're not broken, you're all working correctly, and you should help Trip to solve this situation. Because frankly, if Alex didn't man up and finally told Circuit that he did that, they would have been killed and then he would have altered time anyway. That's why I still think it was dumb for the Alex to erase Circuit's memory to begin with, instead of just simply beep and tell the Rangers don't look at your future because you're gonna change history. So after Circuit figures out this password for the self-destruct sequence, he terminates it and he saves the day. Now while this is going on, the Quantum Ranger and the monster are fighting outside, and they actually go into a traditional old Western duel. This usually is not seen on PR because the main reason why is they're portraying weapons in a more traditional sense, and they don't want kids to replicate it. The thing that I really got shocked though is they left the footage in where they're actually pointing the guns at each other. In standards and practices, in more stricter standard and practices on certain stations and or dealing with Disney, you're not allowed to point guns at people's faces. This episode pretty much broke that. I'm surprised they've gotten through the S&P issues and censoring issues with this episode. I was really shocked at it, because normally they would have just simply had reshot the whole scene and done it in a different way. But it was cool that they actually left the scene intact, and we got a cool moment with Eric. Now, when Circuit finished and saved the day and bypassed the self-destruct and turned it off, you'll also notice that it's Aaron Cahill's voicing the self-destruct sequence, so it's kind of weird hearing Jen being talked as a computer. But the weird thing about in this scene is how Trip is talking to Circuit. Whoever's operating Circuit, the puppeteer who's operating Circuit, forgot to be opening his mouth and turning on his lights, because his chest lights are off and he wasn't actually moving. I assume it was just a problem. Maybe the puppet broke down and they had no choice but to film, but it was a real big issue because it just he wasn't doing anything. Now, thanks to Circuit being the hero that he was at the last minute saving the Rangers from the monster who was about to shoot them, he got cut off from the future because he broke his communications terminal. And they were unable to call the Time Force Megazord, so they actually had to fight with the Time Flyer, which pretty much happened in the original episodes. Similar circumstances had happened, and that's pretty much it. It was cool actually to see the monster be taken down from the Q-Rex, because usually that doesn't happen that often. After a while, it was always the Time Force and the Time Shadow taking them down. So it was cool to actually see the Time Force Rangers fighting the monster in the Time Flyer and Eric controlling the Q-Rex. It was kind of a unique way to finish the monster off. So after a little bit of repair, Circuit was finally woke up and he was fine and everything and all, and then everyone went on their merry way, and he told everyone that that he's fine, nothing was wrong with him. I just didn't like though that he didn't tell them that Alex erased his memory. I mean, it would have brought up a lot of big flags before the finale, 3-part finale for Time Force, and it would have been a little bit more of interesting, because I know Jen would have called him and flat out said, "Why did you do this? We needed to know this information," and then he would have had us spill his beans as like, "Why you can't know this, this, and this." We missed that little dynamic at the end, but they simply decided to end the episode on a high note instead of a low note. I particularly love this episode because we didn't have that many Circuit-focused episodes. He's a really cool character. Taku and Circuit are totally different characters. Taku in Time Ranger, he's a lot more serious. He does have his quirky moments, so they're totally two different characters, but I do enjoy both of them. That's the reason why I really wish Bandai had released Taku/Circuit in the Bandai toy line. I really wish they had done that. I mean, it would have probably been expensive, and that's probably the reason why they didn't do it, but I thought it would have been a real nice little thing that we would have gotten deluxe Circuit or something. I give this episode 4 out of 5. I mean, it was great and excellent, but there was some, due to the goofiness with the self-destruct sequence and the nonsense with the I can't go into the base and then you're in there. That's the only reason why I knock it down. It's just a minor thing. Overall, the episode was excellent. It was a good way to get ready for the finale for the episode. We had this one little episode, just a little breather before the finale episodes. What do you guys particularly think of this episode? Do you love this episode? Do you hate Circuit? What do you guys think? Leave your comments below, of course. Again, continue suggesting episodes. I know there are many episodes that you guys want me to review, like Forever Red and other team episodes. I'm trying to save them for later. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys right back here next week. Yeah, it's raining really badly right now, but